Hello, dear dancers. This is Joana Saahirah with another message from the womb. This time around, inspired or suggested by Katia Ferez. Thank you, dear, for the suggestion. There is always a good reason why things happen. So, from ignorance can come light. Yes. So thank you for this suggestion. It is something that I've heard on Facebook groups, discussions, and I've heard from Egyptians, I've heard from foreigners, and it has to do with cultural appropriation, or the way foreigners are taking over, under brackets, Oriental dance, Egyptian Oriental dance. Let me start by resuming something which I consider important to bring this subject to light in a logical way. Any ethnic dance brings characteristics from the culture it represents. So if we're talking about Egyptian dance, we're naturally talking about Egyptian culture. And when I teach students around the world in festivals, in my private online courses, in any circumstance, I always pinpoint the importance of knowing the cultural context of the dance in order to understand the dance. I mean, my book is all about cultural context and things that we discover through the dance, things that we discover about the country where this dance was born, about the mentality that is the context for this dance. So the book, the classes, everything I do, it's very much linked to Egyptian culture. The things that shape this dance, that surround this dance, and the importance of knowing that is always on the table. So when you study Egyptian dance, you are invited, at least, if not supposed to know the culture that is around it. I don't see it as appropriation. I see it as appreciation, first of all. So this is a second point that I think it's important to clarify. A foreigner, any foreigner, that takes her time or his time, her energy, her interest, her passion, her respect to study the culture behind the dance, it's not appropriating anything. That's just nonsense. It's respecting. It is appreciating something that in the native country the dance doesn't enjoy. This is also important to say, because if you go to Egypt, for instance, I worked in Egypt, as you all know, for a long time, and I was very surprised to discover that dancers and dance, Oriental dance, is not respected as an art form in Egypt. Dancers are actually treated like prostitutes most of the time, and the dance and the music is not considered an art form. Even in law term, in legal terms, Egyptian dance work is under the Ministry of Tourism, not even culture. So that detail can tell you a lot about how Egyptians see their own dance and their own music, and how they deal with it on a very negative perspective most of the times. Yes, they dance, yes, they love to watch dancing, but at the same time they consider it shameful, haram, according to Islam. Yes, so let's clarify that once a foreigner invests on this dance and goes to Egypt, for instance, to study, to see how it is, whatever is shaping this dance, to know the culture, to know the mentality, I don't think that's called appropriation. I think that's called curiosity. I think that's called respect and appreciation. Something that, I repeat, Egyptians and Arab countries could learn from Western dancers. Yes, this respect, this interest for your culture that our distance allow us to have. Maybe, it's just a suggestion, you could have it in your own country. You could start to see your dance with the same respect that most foreigners see. You could start to see your music and your culture, at least that part of your culture that is usually considered shameful, haram, in Egyptian standards, in Arab standards. You could maybe start to see it with the eyes of a foreigner in the sense of respect and appreciation. So these points are important. Also, let's suppose that this is a global world, right? Let's just suppose, and I think it is, but you may disagree. So we're supposing this is a global world where different dances, different cultures are constantly exchanged. I was born between Portugal and Spain. I was studying classical ballet in the conservatoire, and I was learning flamenco and African dances and gypsy dances from family contours, family contexts. I was not really appropriating anything. I just happened to be alive, and people are moving, and different nationalities cross each other, and we travel between countries, and it's only natural, and I may add healthy, that we enjoy getting into other dances and the cultures behind them. Appropriating would mean trying to get into the dance without respecting what's behind it, without respecting the culture that is behind it, and that exists as well. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that everybody is very respectful towards the cultural context of Egyptian dance. That's not true. Like in any kind of dance, there are people who really go into it with a deep sense of respect and others who don't. But that is not just exclusive from Egyptian dance. You can see that everywhere, even in Egypt. You have communities of salsa, Latin dance. You have communities of tango, Argentinian dance. You have the national company, ballet company. You have the modern dance company of Egypt. All these dances are foreign to Egyptians. Should they be forbidden to dance them because they don't belong to Egypt? Should we forbid Egyptians to do any dance that doesn't belong to their culture because that would be appropriation? How absurd is that? I mean, how illogical is that? Then there is something else, which is probably the top, at the top of the question, which is art as an universal language. If you see Egyptian dance as an art form, you know it that although it's shaped by Egyptian culture, it is in fact an universal language. And there is a reason why you see it all over the world. While the market in Egypt is growing down, while the market in Egypt for Oriental dance is getting more and more decadent, the fact is that around the world, the market is growing. There is Oriental dance everywhere. There are schools, there are festivals everywhere. And you know who are creating these festivals and these schools? Foreigner dancers. Foreigner dancers who also happen to hire Egyptian teachers and Egyptian dancers who don't have job in Egypt. So even this appropriation supposition, yes, this appropriation accusation is a joke, in the sense that if it wasn't for foreign participation in the dance, Egyptian Oriental dance would be probably close to death, if not dead. Who hires Egyptian teachers? Who hires Egyptian dancers to teach abroad, to perform abroad? Most of the dancers you see in festivals around the world, they're not working in Egypt. And if they are, they work very little and under terrible conditions and being disrespected, not being considered as artists. In foreign countries, in fact, they are considered artists and they are paid fairly for their job and they are given opportunities to contribute for the dance evolution. So if that's appropriation, oh my God, I say appropriate, you know, because it's good for everybody. It's good for the dance. It's good for Egypt because it invites people into the country out of curiosity, at least. Yes, it's good for Egyptian dancers and teachers because they have a market where they can work and grow. And it's good for the art form as an universal language. I go back to this point because if you, the one who accuses people of appropriating white foreign dancers, appropriating their beloved dance, if you knew your beloved dance, as you presume you know, you would be aware that this is an art form. As an art form, it is a universal language that appeals to everybody. It doesn't belong just to Egypt. It may be born in Egypt, yes. It may be shaped by Egyptian culture, Egyptian mentality, Egyptian identity. I know that. I've been there. I've worked there. I learned from that. I'm drinking from Egypt every day in my work. So I'm not ignoring that. But aside from that identity, which is very linked to Egyptian identity, the fact is that if you see Oriental Egyptian dance as an art form, you understand It is an universal language that speaks about love, life experiences, sharing, totality, unity, religious, yes, in the true sense of the word, religare, reconnection, reconnection of our bodies with our minds, with our hearts, with our souls, and is also a language that speaks above all freedom. The freedom to feel, the freedom to know what is foreign and yet so close to our heart. And that is Egyptian Oriental dance. If after all that I've said you still think a foreign dancer appropriates the dance and that is very inappropriate, I say, get a life or search for a good shrink. Good luck and happy dancing, Habibi. Mwah!